All right, our numbers have slowed down a little bit here, so I think we'll get started, and folks that are joining us maybe a little bit late can hop on when they're ready. So my name is David Bloomquist. I'm the sports medicine outreach manager for Twin Cities Orthopedics, and I will be moderating our Educate to Elevate sessions over the next several months. So first of all, just want to thank everybody for joining us this evening as we kick off this new community education initiative. I know we're super excited to be offering different topics from high-level speakers across a variety of different topics related to health, wellness, and athletics to help you and your athletes elevate your game. So kind of throughout the Educate to Elevate season, we're going to have a lot of different speakers from within Twin Cities Orthopedics and Training HAUS, and also some other community partners of our two organizations. So all of our details on upcoming speakers will be on the landing page that hopefully was shared with all of you before we kicked off tonight. So we'll have basically quarterly updates. So you'll be able to see 3 speakers at a time on that page. So keep an eye out for those. We'll also be sending out emails before each talk, so you guys get kind of a preview of what's coming up next. A few quick housekeeping items before we kick off tonight's talk. So during the presentation tonight, if you have questions as we're going through, please feel free to submit those using the Q&A function. Kayla and Rachel will both kind of be keeping an eye on that. So if it's something that they can answer during the presentation, they will address that. Otherwise, we'll have some time for Q&A at the very end of the presentation. There's also going to be some interactive questions throughout the presentation, so keep an eye on your screens. There's a few polls during it, and then towards the end, there's a little activity for the group. So if you've got a pen, pencil, and some paper nearby, that definitely would come in handy. And lastly, for tonight's talk, I'm sure a reason a lot of people are here is the Apple Watch giveaway. So following our talk tonight, we will randomly draw a winner from someone that attended the live session, and we'll notify you via the email that you use to register for tonight's talk if you are the big winner. So we're thrilled to be kicking tonight off with a talk from our sports nutrition team discussing fueling foundations as part of the sports nutrition series. So we've got 4 separate sports nutrition talks that are going to kind of all build off of each other. So for this evening, we have Rachel Gorham. You may have seen Rachel Rubat on the invites, but she recently got married. So congratulations to Rachel. And Kayla Colvard is our other speaker. So Rachel's the performance nutrition specialist at TCO and Training HAUS, and also serves as the health and wellness specialist working within our employee wellness program. And she's also a sports dietitian providing nutrition care to individuals. She was a proud member of the 2021-2022 Minnesota Vikings staff and continues to work with a wide variety of athletes. She completed her undergraduate degree at Minnesota State University Mankato in dietetics with a minor in corporate and community fitness, and went on to get her master's degree in multidisciplinary health and communication studies at Fontbonne University in St. Louis. She's most passionate about sports nutrition, being a lifelong athlete herself. She enjoys discussing fueling strategies leading up to and throughout competitions and games, and also helping individuals improve their relationship with food and their bodies. Kayla Colvard is the manager of Training HAUS and TCO Nutrition Services and is a sports dietitian with the University of St. Thomas, leading the development of their sports nutrition program. She's also a member of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee Sports Dietitian Group, and most recently traveled to the Olympic Games in Beijing to support Team USA athletes. She completed her undergraduate and master's degrees at the University of Minnesota in nutrition sciences and completed her specialty practice in care of eating disorders and mental health at the Emily program. Athlete empowerment is her ultimate passion, from optimizing growth to instilling confidence in the kitchen, promoting positive body image and positive relationships with fuel, empowering athletes to be the best that they can be in every way, mentally, physically, and especially through their nourishment. So with that, I am going to kick things over to Kayla and Rachel. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And thank you guys all so much for being here. I know, especially as we kick into fall season, time is of the essence when it comes to managing everything that you need to do as a student athlete and those coaches and parents who are supporting our massive student athletes in our Twin Cities community. So we are truly excited to be here tonight and throughout our year as a whole to truly provide what we believe is foundational information and in our experience with youth to collegiate, professional, Olympic level athletes to really empowering your game and allowing you to last. Like, this is not just about now, it is about making sure that you can take your next best step and get the next best opportunity that your athletics has to offer, that your life has to offer. So tonight we're going to really focus on our fueling foundations, and what is extremely important, especially in nutrition, is really defining a common language in that. So throughout our year, we're going to focus on a variety of pretty intricate and a very applicable nutrition focuses to really elevate your game. But tonight is really about making sure that we all understand the power of nutrition and we can relate in that way. And we start off your fall seasons very strong. So let's kick it over to Rachel, who's going to start us off. I will be monitoring the chat, and you can input questions that no one else can see if you feel uncomfortable in any way in sharing that. But what is really cool is that if you are dealing with some nutrition concern or question, there's a really strong chance that someone else in the room is also feeling the same way or has had those same experiences. And between Rachel and I, we have worked with many high-level athletes and have seen everything under the sun. So we are ready to just be with you here tonight and engage with everything that you have to discuss about nutrition too.
Awesome. Yeah, as Kayla said, please feel free to interact. I know most of you probably spent the day at school, so we don't want this to be like another school session. Definitely feel free to open up in the chat box or ask a question. We'll have those kind of step into our slides so that we're keeping things engaged and interactive. So we'll get started. As Kayla mentioned, this is going to be our fueling foundation. So I like to think of this as, you know, we're starting to build a house. We need to make sure we have all strong, sturdy basis and we're all speaking the same language. Then as we kind of progress throughout the season and working together throughout nutrition information, we can start adding all the details. So that might be paint, right? That might be fun window shutters or pictures on the walls. So right now we're establishing that strong base together. So we're going to start off with one of our reasons why we want to start thinking about nutrition. So the power of nutrition, how it can impact our life. It's not only performance-based, but like Kayla mentioned, it's overall health, right? What is our next step? What are we going to look like? What is our performance? What is our job going to look like maybe down the road? So our reason why nutrition is so important might differ from time to time. Right now, we might be focused more on performance, and a lot of that has to do with crazy busy schedules, right? Our fall time just started. A lot of us are in school. We want to make sure that we have the energy to be a student athlete, right? And to fuel our brain, but also our muscles for performance. We might have more performance enhancements that we're focused on. So that could be improving our strength, our power, our speed, our agility. We might think about preventing injury or possibly recovering from an injury during this time and how nutrition can play a huge role in speeding up that process or preventing, right, injury from happening in this busy season. We might think of nutrition being important in improving body composition, right, for our sport, for long-term health goals as well, and also keeping us safe and protected from illness or decreasing our illness when we do have it. Okay. A lot of that turns into our overall health, right? We are athletes, we are focused on our performance, but all of that needs to come from overall health. And if we're not growing or developing properly, our body can't do the sport, right? We want to continue doing what we love, what we're passionate about. So we want to make sure that our nutrition is focused on performance, but also just on our basic needs, our growth and development. Some of that comes through our hormone communication and balance, depending, I mean, any age, right, needs to make sure that those hormones are going to be functioning properly so that our muscle and brain can connect and perform at the speed that we want them to. We want to maintain our cognitive function, so our speed, our reaction time, our clarity. But like I said earlier, mainly being a student athlete, right? We want to make sure that during the day we can commit to our studies, we can stay focused and still continue that energy on in the evening when we're doing what we love. Right. And then long term, something that I love is preventing chronic disease. Okay. Any concerns about heart health or maybe diabetes, we want to make sure that all of the things that you learned tonight are going to impact you today, right, and tomorrow, and the foods that you choose tomorrow, but also they're going to help you long term. All right. So our first poll and engagement, we are going to ask you a question. Okay. Our first question is, which one of the following is not a macronutrient? Not a macronutrient. Awesome, you guys. I see some answers coming in.
Tricky question.
All right, our 4 options are carbohydrates, protein, water, and vitamins. Give it just another few seconds here. All right. Okay, so our question 1 poll, which one of the following is not a macronutrient? We have 48% of participants tonight saying water, okay? And then we have 43%, close second, saying vitamins. All right, so we'll address all of this. We're going to go over our main 4 macronutrients, okay? When we think of macronutrients, those are going to be our main key players, right? When we're talking about fueling foundations. The subset of that, or the next level, is going to be our micronutrients. So vitamins are not a macronutrient, but super essential and important for us to talk about. And we'll definitely get there after we cover our macronutrients. Okay. Thank you guys for your engagement there. That was awesome. All right. So our first macronutrient, or I think of them as our key players, okay, is carbohydrates. And this one is one of my favorites because it is our main fuel source. So I think of this as gas in the tank, right? I'm going to visualize kind of a car throughout our talk tonight. So main gas in the tank, my main fuel source for exercise or any intensity that I'm practicing at. This is where we're going to get our power, our speed, our explosiveness. As we mentioned earlier, this is where I'm going to get also the fuel for my brain to stay in tune during class, right? And make sure that I can achieve my academic goals, but then also that I can translate all of that over into practice, okay, my training sessions, and be a better athlete and really elevate my game, okay? One of the most interesting things about carbohydrates to me is that they have a best friend, right? So I think of them pairing with protein to make sure that it's doing its job. And we're going to get into protein next. But carbohydrates and protein really work together so that we can recover faster, right? So that we can recover properly and maybe prevent some soreness or decrease some soreness for tomorrow's practice, right? When we look at the right side here, we have a red plate. This is going to be one of our performance plates. You can see at the top there, we have our carbohydrate sources circled. Not only do we have grains, most people typically think of breads and pastas and rice, but we also have fruits there too, right? Another option or a source of carbohydrates would be maybe some dairy products. So if you take a second, just a quick 5-second check and say, okay, how many carbohydrates sources did I have today? Maybe for breakfast, I had oatmeal. Maybe for lunch, I had a sandwich. Maybe for snack, I had a piece of fruit. Okay, take just a quick 5 seconds and think about your carbohydrate sources. can even write them down too if you have that handy pen and paper that David mentioned. Right? Okay, so what if we don't have enough? What if we are not eating enough carbohydrates, right? Well, our energy levels are definitely going to dip. We're not going to feel as ready for practice. Our game, we might feel more fatigued, more tired, especially at practice or in competition. Might be a little bit slower reaction times, which sometimes that can make or break our play, right? And when we're focusing on elevating our game, we need to be 100% energized and on tune, okay? We want to maintain our immune system as well, okay? So preventing sickness and ultimately preventing injury. So our carbohydrates are really that fuel in the tank for our performance and are going to be the number one thing that we talk about when we're thinking of our fueling foundations.
Now, one thing that often will come up between Rachel and I with the teams and athletes we work with is when athletes don't get enough carbohydrates, one of those first things to go is your technique. Like those carbohydrates are your brain's quickest and most favorite fuel source. And so when you start to deplete that energy and your brain just doesn't have enough to pull from, think about as you're running and you're cutting up the field and you just have a slight different angle that you hit because your brain and that functionality was not at 100%. That could be the difference between staying in your season and being on the sideline for the remainder of the season, or the remainder of your career. So having those carbohydrates is absolute key to keeping you in the game.
Absolutely. And so where are we going to get them from, right? We just looked at our performance plate. We saw a portion of the plate was carbohydrates. A large portion of the plate was carbohydrates, but we can use them in different ways, right? When we think about how I can get that fuel or that energy source to really last me throughout the day, we can choose kind of from more complex sources and then more simple sources. So this is a really cool way for us to make sure that we have energy long-term, but then we also have that quick access energy for right at the beginning of practice. Or maybe I have a long meet day, right? And I need to just top off my energy stores before I go into this next race. Okay, so we can see we have complex sources. These typically have more fiber in them. So we note our grains are in there, maybe some starchy vegetables like corn, peas, and potatoes, maybe some beans as well. Because of the fiber in there, our nutrition muscles, our stomach, right, our intestines are going to take a little bit longer to break those down. And that's going to mean that you have your energy for a lot longer, right? So this is energy for multiple hours. Meaning these are going to be really good choices to have at your meals. We'll talk a little bit more about timing in a few minutes here, but these are going to be kind of that main staple for you. I think of these if I'm looking at a bonfire and coming out of summer, right? Lots of bonfires, hopefully for all of our participants. But that's going to be my log on the fire, right? It's going to keep that energy burning for a long time and make sure that I'm fueling my sport and my practice. My simple carbohydrates are going to be quick energy sources. So almost like throwing a leaf on the fire, right? It's going to be that nice energy that's going to top off my tank. This might be something that I work in during my training session or maybe during a competition to really make sure that I have that explosive power and that speed to pull from.
Now you'll notice what we did not say is that these are good carbs and bad carbs. Right?
Yes.
What they are, they provide a different purpose. And when we think about our purpose as an athlete, we ask our bodies to do a heck of a lot more than the average individual. And so when we do that and we utilize our nutrition and these small nutrition choices to maximize our game, that's when we could use our purpose for these carbohydrates as well.
Absolutely. So frequently, Kayla and I are asked, well, how many carbohydrates do I need? How do I know? And as we're talking about our fueling foundations, the true answer is it depends, right? There's so many factors that we're going to consider. If an athlete comes and sits down with Kayla or I, right, we're going to talk about the training intensity, what time of season they're in, right? Are you in season? Are your training sessions at a higher intensity? You might need more carbohydrates, right? We will talk a little bit about those complex sources and how you can really utilize those simple carbohydrates for topping off long training days. Okay. How long are you practicing for, right? Especially in endurance athletes, we want to think about how can we use those simple carbohydrate sources throughout their practice to maintain their energy levels. Always depends on your goals too, right? Each athlete is an individual. And so we might have a team, we might have a position that could have similar carbohydrate needs, but each individual athlete will need different items, right? And different amounts on their plates. Okay. And then we think about even smaller within your day-to-day practices. When is game day? How can we prepare to make sure that your gas tank is topped off to perform at your best? I have a table here, right? And it's lots of words. This is something that is just a reference showing how much variety or how wide the span of carbohydrate intake could be for different athletes, right? When we are considering maybe a lower intensity versus a higher intensity, maybe training an hour versus 4 hours a day, this is going to be a huge variety in how much we're taking in within day to day. So ultimate recommendation is always come and speak to a sports dietitian, because we will consider all of these individual factors for you and make sure that you really have your own individualized practice. Okay, here we have our 3 performance plates all side by side. This is the first time that we're looking at them together. And so we want to focus in on each piece by piece. So right now we're going to be looking at our carbohydrates or our whole grains mentioned on here. On our blue plate, okay, on the left side, our easy training plate, you might see these carbohydrates be about 1/4 of the plate, okay? We have our whole grains in there. And this could be a really good portion or visual for you to have, maybe in an off-season time, maybe more on a rest day. But we then transition into where most of our athletes hang out, is kind of that moderate training plate, our gray plate in the middle. I see a lot of my high school athletes in this plate. Now, all depends again on their goals and what their training looks like. But that moderate training plate, we have about 1/3 of the plate with our grains, still our fruit on the side, and you can see it increases even more as our training gets harder. So our intensity or duration increases too. So that could be about half of our plate. These are really essential visuals for you guys to use depending on your season and even at lunch, right? School lunch, I'm going to be filling up my plate. How can I make sure that I have half of my plate, those carbohydrate sources, so that I can make sure that I'm getting the energy that I need for my hard training sessions? Okay. All right, on to our next macronutrient, protein. I know a lot of people really enjoy talking about protein. So when we think of protein, we really think of muscles, okay? I think some of you can see my video, but typically when I think of carbohydrates, I do a little bit of an arm movement. I think of my energy, right? Running around. But with protein, we usually think of muscle, right? So everyone can do their own flex. If you're with a group, show off your muscles, okay? So our protein is going to be our main muscle builder. Think of these as like Legos, right? I have a ton of Legos to choose from, and I can make a beautiful structure putting all of my Legos together. Okay. They also help with our hormone production. So what does that mean for you? That's going to be essential for your natural growth, right? For making sure that your digestion is on point, meaning we're having proper absorption of all the nutrition that we're eating throughout the day. We can stay safe from sickness, right? But also feeling satisfied between meals. I just talked to an athlete the other day who we were really focusing on some protein, and about 2 hours after they eat, they're like, oh, I'm always super, super hungry. And so when we start building up that protein day in and day out and thinking about it, not only at our meals, but our snacks, that can really help us feel satisfied a little bit longer and fueling our sport. Okay. So what can't protein do, right? It's this great thing. As an athlete, don't we all want to get bigger, better, faster, stronger muscles? Yes, but it's not our fuel source, right? It's not going to be gas in the tank. I think of if I'm thinking about our car, or visualizing our car, my carbohydrates are gas in the tank, okay? My protein maybe is the structure, okay? It's the metal It's maybe the tires, right? It could be the actual tank, but it's not going to actually make my car go or have me perform or elevate my game. Okay. It is super essential in keeping me full, right? Maintaining my satisfaction throughout the day. So what are some sources? A lot of athletes think about animal sources first and foremost, and those are great because they do have all of those essential Legos so that I can build kind of that beautiful muscle structure. And we find those through anything, right? We think of meats, maybe dairy products, eggs, but then we also have non-animal sources too. And these take maybe a little bit more help. We might have to do some pairings together to get all of those building blocks that we need to build our muscles. So some items are beans, nuts, seeds, maybe some grain items too. Soy products are a really great option. So a lot of athletes seem to try tofu right away, or edamame, maybe some of these beans there that you see. Those are going to be great protein sources for you to pull from and work throughout the day. Needs. So how much protein do we need? Especially if I'm thinking, okay, I want to build muscle, right? I want to bulk up. I want to make sure that I'm stronger, faster, better. Biggest takeaway from this portion is more is not always better. We want to make sure, one, how you're training. Okay. Again, your individualized training session, your duration, and your intensity of your training. So when we think about your stimulus or the stress that you're putting on your body, yes, you need protein to repair all of those little tiny muscle tears that you're doing during your training, but we want to make sure that you're using that protein properly. Our body has a little bit of a limit, right? We can only use so much protein at a time, and we'll dive into that deeper when we talk about nutrient timing. But here's a table that shows kind of the wide range of protein needs that an athlete could have, right? If you're an endurance athlete, maybe you're a runner, skier, biker, swimmer, okay? Or if you're doing resistance training, you might need a little bit more. So thinking about what kind of training you're doing, what kind of intensity, but then your individual goals as well. All right, here are our plates again. We're always going to return to our performance plates. And one of the coolest things about protein is if you look at our blue, our gray, our red plate, they're all the same portion size, right? Again, mentioning that even though we're training super hard, maybe we're looking at that red plate there, we don't have protein as half of the plate. Such a big emphasis on grains as our main energy source, because that's going to fuel our performance. It's going to elevate our game, where our protein needs to stay more consistent, right? To build that beautiful structure. All right, our third macronutrient. Okay, so if you're taking notes, here's our number 3, fat. My movement for this, so if you're a movement person, is kind of like protection. Okay, remember carbohydrates, we're moving, we're running, we have our energy, protein is our muscles, fat is our protection. Okay, it protects us from those extremes. So we see here thermoregulation, or controlling our sweat. I think of protecting us from super, super hot temperatures, super, super cold temperatures within our body. Okay, it's also going to protect us from maybe some vitamin deficiencies or not having enough of those vitamins, because it can store some of our essential performance vitamins in that fat tissue. So for example, vitamin D, right, can be really, really helpful for our bone health and preventing stress fractures, or really preventing injury and making sure that we can perform for our entire season and continuing to go into that next step, that next season too. Okay, so it's that protection for us. It is a fuel source as well. So it can be a little bit of that gas in our tank. Again, 50% of that plate right there is going to be our grains or our carbohydrates. And so our fats are going to be kind of that support fuel.
And noting what fat is not, we hear a lot of athletes say they feel fat today, or they feel fat at least different times of the year. Fat is not a feeling. It's only an essential nutrient, and that's what we're going to treat it as, especially with our long-term work.
Absolutely. Okay, so this essential nutrient, right? Fat sources. We think of some that are going to be super functional for our performance, and then some that are going to be less functional. Okay, make sure that those less functional fats, I want a big understanding that those can still be worked in, right? We can still have those foods. When we think of those that we're going to be choosing more often, that might be our functional fats, because they are going to be super protective for us and speak to all of those items that we mentioned in that last slide. So our functional fats, these are going to make sure that they're decreasing inflammation, right? And decreasing soreness, protecting our joints. Our items like olive oil, hummus, great to work into snacks, nuts, nut butters, flaxseed, maybe some fatty fish like tuna or salmon. And then our less functional fats typically contain more saturated fats, right? So I always visualize like my steak or my red meat, I can visibly see that fat on there. And it's super essential for our bodies, right? It can be that fuel source for us, but this might decrease some of our recovery. Okay, it might increase or it's potential to increase some of our soreness. We want to make sure that we're preventing injury as best as we can. Okay, so I always think of those trans or saturated fats are going to be decreasing my recovery, but our functional fats are really going to be that protective item for us to utilize to make sure that we can prevent injury and really stick in our season. Okay. When we talk about needs for fats, we always kind of go down the line of carbohydrates first, proteins, and then fats are going to really work their way in because these are in a lot of the other sources. We can see some of our protein foods here, right, on the functional fat side. Okay, so we're going to have those worked into our protein foods and then maybe some of our carbohydrate foods too. All right, our needs by plate. Smaller side of these plates, you can see our fats are labeled either by teaspoons or tablespoons. Like I mentioned, these might be things that you're cooking with, right, that are worked into our proteins, but they're also a really good way to be preparing some of those grains too and protecting our body. Also keeping us fuller longer because it does take a little bit longer to digest by our nutrition muscles. Okay. Last portion of our plate, okay? Vegetables, eating our greens. I'm sure everyone has heard that, right? I'm gonna eat my vegetables, or I need to get a half of my plate fruits and vegetables. I'm sure we've seen maybe some of those plates in our school lunchrooms, or maybe just throughout life. So why do we need to eat vegetables? Why are they so important, especially for athlete? And it's truly the color. One of the challenges I always have most of my athletes do is try to aim for 2 colors at their meals. Okay. So if you think that would be helpful for you and your performance, maybe you just write that down quick. Okay, I'm going to aim for 2 colors at my meals. So let's identify one color that would be helpful. Green is an awesome, awesome color because it has these vitamins and minerals in them that can really help our athletic performance. For example, if we think of magnesium, okay, magnesium is found in some of these green vegetables, maybe green beans, kale, lettuce, broccoli, and that can be essential for helping our hydration, okay, our muscle contraction, our muscle relaxation, preventing cramping. And everyone who has ever cramped before knows that that cramp isn't just that few seconds, right? It's going to last. If you can still have that pain after your cramp, and we want to prevent that from hindering your performance at all, especially if you're in practice or in a game. Okay. These vegetables are helpful because they're going to keep you fuller longer. They have fiber in them. It's going to take a little bit longer to digest. They're going to keep you safe, help your immune function. And then we think of long-term health, right? So they can prevent those chronic diseases that we talked about at the beginning. All right, our 4th macronutrient, going back to our poll. So this is our 4th. Typically, we would call it fluid, but definitely thinking of hydration too. I want to make sure that when we think of hydration, knowing that it's not just water, it's so much more than that. And we'll keep expanding on it. So first of all, our hydration, or the fluid that we drink, is essential for our performance, because if we are hitting our macronutrients, our carbohydrates, our proteins, our fats, we're getting all of those in and day out, and we don't have enough fluid, we really can't access that energy, right? We need to make sure that that fluid is able to transport all of our great nutrition where it needs to go. And this is really essential for when we're recovering from injury. Okay? Hydration is super important for keeping our nutrition muscles clean, right? We're going to make sure that we're going to the bathroom properly, we're going to the bathroom regularly, and that we're really getting rid of those toxins throughout the day too. Okay? So how much do you need? Always a question. An easy way to find kind of your minimum fluid needs per day is take your body weight in pounds and divide it by 2. Okay? And that's, again, your minimum. You might need more, especially if you're practicing in full pads, if it's summer. Maybe you're a swimmer and you're in a hot, humid pool most of the time and you can't tell how much you're sweating. Okay? Or maybe you can tell and you really need to up that from that starting goal. Okay? So everyone take just a few seconds here. Maybe you know your weight, maybe you don't, maybe you have a pretty good guess. Just divide that by 2 and maybe write down that starting goal, fluid ounces. Okay. It's always a good starting point. And then feel free, reach out to Kayla or I. We would love to sit down and talk with you a little bit more about your individualized needs, depending on your sport and what your goals are. All right. Our second poll of the night, nutrient timing. Okay. Question for all of our participants. Have you ever been told to have protein after a training session? Okay, this could be maybe a coach, maybe a trainer, maybe a dietitian has told you that before. Maybe you've heard it on social media.
And maybe you haven't heard it either.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you guys for participating. All right. So majority of you have been told to have protein after a training session. Awesome. Okay, so let's expand on why here in a little bit. Okay. When we think about nutrient timing, I usually like to take a step back. Okay, so now we're a bird looking down. We're going to look at our entire day and our training schedule. We can see all of these blue times that we're eating throughout the day. It's pretty frequent, right? And the main reason for this is we want to keep up our energy levels throughout the day. But our body is processing a lot more. Like Kayla said, athletes are very unique, right? Your body needs a lot more fuel, maybe than somebody who's less active than you or doesn't have the same athletic goals. So we can see our breakfast in the morning, our snack, our lunch, but then I want to make sure that we expand on today, prepping for our practice and recovering from our practice or our training session, having dinner, and then maybe even a bedtime snack too. All of these meals and snacks are super functional for our goals and making sure that we can elevate our game. With timing, if we find ourselves super busy, school, maybe it's classes, maybe we're working and we're training for our sport, timing is going to be key. I encourage you all to find if timing is one of those barriers and making sure that you're eating frequently throughout the day, how can we connect on maybe planning or preparing something to set you up for success and make sure that you are fueling frequently and understanding how you can do that, even if you have really short times to eat throughout the day. All right, carbohydrate and protein timing. As we talked about those macronutrients, our number one fuel source are carbohydrates, but then our protein, our building blocks for our muscle tissue, we need to have those frequently throughout the day. And if we're looking back at our training or our fuel and training schedule here, you can see that most of these meals and snacks, all of them actually, have carbohydrates and protein in them. Okay. Our carbohydrates are going to maintain those energy levels, and we circle back to our bonfire, right? We're going to get that long-term energy source. And then we're also going to have those simple, quick energy sources that we would utilize maybe throughout the day. Say we're in a class or we're right before practice and we really just need to top off our energy stores. Our protein, because we know that more is not always better, okay? We know that frequent protein intake is going to be the best for our muscle and for our recovery, especially when we're stressing it every single day. Now, our training is going to be a super positive stress, but we want to make sure that we're able to recover from that and continue to grow and hit the ground running the next day. So you can see we have our breakfast, snack, lunch, recovery, dinner, and snack. Our body can only utilize so much protein at one time. And we want to make sure that we're giving it every opportunity it has throughout the day, probably eating every 3 to 4 hours, right? That's what this looks like. So eating every 3 to 4 hours, making sure that we're getting protein in at each one of those meals and snacks so that our muscles can truly perform their best the next time they hit the court or the field or the pool. So diving into our bookends, right? We're training. And so our first thing we're going to attack is pre-exercise or pre-training fuel. I like this visual here because it talks about if I'm backing up all the way from 4 hours before my go time. So whether that is practice or if it's competition, okay? Most of the time I am able to process a full meal, right? We think about digestion here and how carbohydrates, our proteins, our fats are going to have a few hours to truly work themselves and turn themselves into that fuel or energy and not feel like they're still digesting while I'm trying to perform, right? We've all maybe had that time where we ate a little bit too close to our practice and maybe it wasn't some of the best sources for us or the most digestible, and we don't want to be feeling that way, right? We want to be feeling like we're able to hit the ground running. So this is going to be your main fuel source, your 4 hours before, having a balanced meal with your carbohydrates, thinking of your performance plate, having protein, about a quarter of it, and then a smaller amount of fat. We can see that our protein and our fat get smaller and smaller and smaller the closer we get to performance time. So if our practice or our competition, we still want to make sure that we are topping off our energy or our fuel source within that 30 minutes to an hour. So those snacks, those quick energy snacks, you might see these through sports performance chews or gels or goos. Those really simple sugars are going to be a huge fuel source for our athletes to make sure that they have the energy to pull from when they step into that game. Okay. After that go time, those fluids, carbohydrate beverages are going to be super helpful for getting your body a little bit more fuel, but then balancing those electrolytes and the fluid that you need to stay hydrated, especially when you're sweating a lot. Okay. You'll notice that things that aren't going to be the most helpful for your performance is if you were to have super high fat or high fiber options right before you're trying to perform. And this is, again, back to digestion. Those are going to sit a little bit longer in my nutrition muscles. And that's great. We want to do that at our meal times or maybe do it after, right? Our training session or our competition. But it's something that our body is going to be working a little bit too hard on. And we really want to make sure that all of that work is going to our muscles and our performance at that time. All right. During exercise, competitions, games, training, we want to make sure that we're always staying hydrated. A lot of this goes back to staying hydrated day in and day out. Okay. If we know that we have a race and that morning we wake up and we're like, I need to drink a ton of water today because I have a race. This is something that we want to make sure we're doing every single day and we're staying consistent with it. And then when we get to our exercise session or our competition, we can top off those stores. So carbohydrate drinks, maybe it's Gatorade, maybe it's those gels or goos. Those are going to be helpful because that sugar in our muscles is going to make sure that we get all of those electrolytes, okay, or those functioning muscle contraction, muscle relaxation items where they need to go. Okay. So thinking about am I exercising? Am I sweating a lot? What kind of environment am I in? And do I need those carbohydrate sources during my training session? What's my intensity like today? Then we're always following up with our recovery fueling. A lot of research has gone into this subject, into making sure that you're able to take away all of the practice that you just did. We see exercise as stress for our muscles. Sometimes I think of like a rope and putting little tears in a rope or frays in a rope, right? And that's like our little tears or those micro tears that we're putting in our muscles. We want to start repairing those within a certain time frame after our practice. So that could be our 30-minute time frame, or I've heard before like 20 and 2, okay? And that 20 or 30 minutes after our session, we want to start hitting some sort of recovery snack. That could be something like chocolate milk, right? That's a great source because it's repairing our muscles with protein. It's also replenishing our energy stores through carbohydrates. And we're getting a lot of fluid and electrolytes to it because we probably just lost some fluid through our sweat. Okay, this could be something else. We have a huge list of performance pack items that you can throw in your bag or your locker that would be super functional for you to have, quick and easy, maybe right when you get out of the shower. Could be something as simple as a Cliff Bar. Maybe it's some trail mix and fruit. Those items that are going to be jump-starting your recovery until you're able to get to that full balanced performance plate meal later in the evening or in the day. Hopefully within that 2 hours is our goal. And that again is going to have a really good balance of those long-term energy sources like your carbohydrates, but also your protein, a little bit of fats in there too. Okay, our timing. We already mentioned how essential it is for your hydration to be met every single day, right? Not just when you're in season, not just when maybe you have a game coming up this weekend, but we really want to make sure that we're meeting our fluid needs, that starting goal that you guys all wrote down, every single day. As we get closer to our exercise or our game, we want to make sure that we are staying hydrated. And one of the ways to do that is to think about, okay, beforehand, I might have my green Gatorade bottle. I see a lot of athletes with that. That's about 30 ounces. I might have about half of that when I'm having my pre-go time meal that we looked at in that graph earlier. Okay. As I get closer, I'm still going to be drinking, sipping, always having my water bottle with me. During my exercise, during my competition, my game, this is when I want to be drinking to thirst, right? And sometimes our body isn't going to cue us or give us, it's not going to tell us that we're thirsty because we are so focused and keyed into our game at that time. So we might have to have reminders, right? So maybe that's an accountability buddy on your team to say, okay, yep, let's just take a gulp or a few sips every 10 or 15 minutes. Or maybe I'm watching somebody else race and that's my cue to take a few sips. Now think again, what's my intensity? How long am I exercising for? Are carbohydrate beverages like Gatorade or Powerade going to be super helpful for me during this time so that I can keep my energy up? If so, make sure that we're balancing both. We have our water and we have our Gatorade with us just so that we have those options. For people who really don't like drinking throughout maybe a competition weekend or maybe many meets, Gatorade might be a great option just because it tastes good and you might be more likely to drink more if you have something that tastes a little bit better. Okay. And then after you're done training, we want to make sure that you're fully rehydrating. So part of that recovery snack is going to be some sort of fluid, whether you're finishing up with your water bottle or your Gatorade at that time. But a good indicator of your hydration status can be your urine color. So going to the bathroom, checking your urine, making sure it's like a pale lemonade, and then you know that you're on your way to that hydration. Okay, we have concluded all 4 of our macronutrients, okay, and talked a little bit about timing or how to place them throughout our day for your success, right? To elevate your game and your practice. Now let's test. Let's get some action items in. So this is where our chat function can come into play. Again, you can just share it with the panelists if you have some answers. And you can also write them down on your piece of paper if that's going to be helpful for you to kind of self-reflect. But our first question is going to be, write down 3 reasons why nutrition is important for you, your body, and your goals. We'll give you guys a few seconds
Thank you
here.
guys so far who already have utilized the chat to or ask a few questions too. I'm getting back to some of those individual questions as well right now.
Awesome. Remember, this is individualized for you. So whatever your goals are as a student athlete, as an athlete, as a human, right? All of the reasons that we shared how powerful nutrition is, how is it going to sit for you? Okay, wrote down some of my answers here just to run through. So one of the biggest reasons, especially when I was a student athlete, was I wanted to stay focused in school, right? I knew that school was taking up a lot of my time, a lot of my energy too, especially when I was a swimmer. So when I was getting up and jumping in the pool at 5:30 in the morning, I wanted to make sure that I could still finish my homework later in the evening. I wanted to have energy for my sport. I was a D2 athlete, and I wanted to make sure that I really could meet the goals that not only I set for myself, but then my coach set for me too. I wanted to prevent injury. Thankfully, never had any big injuries that took me away from my sport, but it was something that I really wanted to think about and make sure that I could prevent and do everything in my power. Ooh, Kayla, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I was gonna say, you guys have some awesome reasons as well. Keeping fuel for both sports and functioning throughout the day, helping us focus, recover, prevent future diseases and injury. I love it. Increase your performance, build strength, reduce risk of injury, keeping you healthy and strong and energized. So yeah, you guys are very connected. We know nutrition's important. We're gonna build on that. Mental health, I love it.
Yes, awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for working in that chat function. That's great. Okay, our second item to think about, okay, testing you, naming all 4 macronutrients, but then what they do for your body. So that could be something as simple as a word or 2, right? What is going to be kind of like that mantra or that cue that when I say a macronutrient, you know how it's going to help your performance as an athlete, how it's going to elevate your game. All right, we'll give a few more seconds for you guys to write that down. All right, I'm going to go over our macronutrients and what they do for our body. These are some words that stand out to me. You might have different words, right? You might have things that are going to be a little bit more individualized for you. I always think my first one is carbohydrates, and that's my energy. Again, my arm movement. This is going to be my main fuel source or my gas in the tank. Protein is going to be my builder, okay? So I always think of my flex, showing off my muscles or building Legos. Fat, I have my protection. And then fluid, true hydration, right? So knowing that I have what I need for all of those 3 macronutrients above to give me the energy, and the nutrients get them where they need to go. Okay. Our last action item is for you. Maybe you're by yourself, maybe you're with your family, your team, but build a balanced performance plate for breakfast specifically. I want to challenge you to think about breakfast, because I know that as athletes, when we get up in the morning, we're going, right? It's sometimes a struggle to get in breakfast. So let's all work together right now to think of what are some awesome items that we can choose so that we can hit all of those areas on our performance plate. Here's your little cheat sheet for your performance plate that we're looking at. We're looking at our hard training plate.
See, so far we have some answers: oatmeal, fruit, hard-boiled egg. Awesome balance there. French toast and a protein shake. Perfect.
Nice. Awesome, you guys.
Eggs, yep.
Okay. Well, here's mine that I built. Okay. Very similar to one of the first
Avocado
examples
toast.
that you, oh, avocado toast. Great.
Mhm.
Very similar to one of the first examples that whoever shared, oatmeal. Okay. So oatmeal, maybe I throw some Greek yogurt on there. Maybe I have almonds or maybe a nut butter. Okay. And then strawberries I chose. So strawberries are one of my favorites to have in the morning, but this could be whatever you enjoy, right? Your oatmeal, topping it with your protein source. I love how people mentioned hard-boiled eggs, maybe a protein shake to be super quick and just functional in the morning. Sometimes we need something to just grab and run out the door and have, you know, on our way to school or on our way to work. Awesome. This is a reminder for you, another challenge, kind of homework, I would say, for you to think about your fueling schedule, okay? What you do now, and maybe any adjustments or changes that could really help you elevate your game from what you learned tonight.
So guys, the awesome thing about your nutrition strategy or that schedule is that as we define our nutrition action plan, what you do during practice, what you do during your off season leading into your season, you're training your nutrition muscles just like any other muscle in your body. So as you get this message of what we learned today ingrained in your game, that's how you start to build that nutrition strength, and then your muscles start to respond, and then your brain starts to respond, and everything comes together. So it's truly defining that nutrition strategy even during practice. It does not change on game day. The goal is by the time we get to game day, our nutrition is down, set, and pat, and we know, and our body knows exactly what to expect at any moment.
Absolutely. Well, awesome, you guys. Any questions? I know Kayla's kind of looking at our chat function here. We have David back.
We did have one come through in the chat. Someone was asking, what is the safest way to bulk up?
Great question. So safest way to bulk up. When I hear bulk up, I always think of, right, we're increasing our muscle. So a lot of people go first to that protein. So my number one tip is think about that frequency of protein, that we have that nutrition strategy, like Kayla just said, to have our protein frequently throughout the day. But then remember its best friend, right? Having those carbohydrates alongside of it so that our protein can truly do its work in the muscle to strengthen it and grow it in size. So I'd say think about your frequency of fuel, your training schedule. So writing that down, doing your homework, and then making sure that you have that really good balance of your carbohydrates and your protein. One thing that we didn't really emphasize would be that bedtime snack, right? You might have seen on that fueling schedule or on that nutrition strategy, there was a snack before bed. That can be a huge benefit to gaining muscle mass when we have that protein source before bed because of all of the tasks that our body is doing while it's sleeping. It's choosing whether it's going to be in that building state, and we want to make sure we're giving it that source to do so.
And now when we're thinking about bulking up too, like we're thinking about not just the size of our muscle, but the function of our muscle, like bulking that power. And so as we start to fill our muscle with the quality building pieces, that's what allows it to translate too. And so often, as Rachel noted, we think of protein, but if we just supplement, like scoop protein after protein powder, it doesn't actually build our muscle into anything. So it's kind of like having a really strong but like empty balloon. Like you could pull it and tug it and like really strong protein, but if you don't fill it up with anything, if you don't use your air, that balloon never goes anywhere. So that's where our carbohydrate sources come into play. We have so many athletes that kind of skip that step in integrating their carbohydrates. And that's really, as we're growing and developing as a high school athlete or maintaining our game and take us to the next level, both male and female, the carbs are key in that bulking process. And then when we have all our nutrition points in queue, that's when we can start talking about our timing even further and other nutrition interventions. And I would encourage you, we're going to talk about this topic specifically in a few of our Educate to Elevate sessions this spring too. So reach out individually because it does come down to individual need, but stay tuned for the rest of our Educate to Elevate nutrition series as well. So we'll get to really dig deep into that muscle building topic.
So we had another question come in the chat. Does drinking protein drinks such as protein milk have the same result for our bodies as eating meat would?
Yeah.
Great question. I was gonna say I could take it.
Yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead. I'm excited.
Great questions. So same effect, right? We think of 2 animal sources that we're consuming. So if I'm assuming we're having like a dairy or cow's milk, right? We're going to have all of those building blocks or those amino acids that would be similar to the meat that we're having. So yes, we're going to be getting those same building blocks, but then think about the benefits of eating kind of that food source from your meat, right? That might be a little bit more filling. It might keep us satisfied longer, but both can be functional, right? Our milk might be a really good option, or a protein shake might be a great option for that recovery snack for a quick on the go, but definitely having that place for maybe some of those animal proteins at our meals.
Kind of in the realm of protein and strength too, someone also asked, do you have to use weights to get stronger?
I was just about to address that one. Well, we're thinking about our strength. That stimulus is absolutely going to be something that allows us to trigger our muscles to get stronger. Now, does that only happen with weights? Not necessarily. Even, your sprint mechanics and how you define your technique on the court or in the pool, all of those can build strength in specific ways. But what we'll learn throughout our Educate to Elevate series as well, we're going to have our top sport performance coaches within Training House and TCO jump on to really talk about that more in depth too, because there's absolutely a balance between weightlifting and sprinting and recovery workouts and yoga and just how we can blend all of our stimuli to allow your game to last as well and make sure that we are decreasing injury and managing that load. So on that one, I encourage you to dig deeper at our Educate to Elevate series as well.
And this one just came through in our Q&A function, which I'm super glad it did because I was going to ask you guys this one if nobody else did. But what are some of the best in-between game snacks for tournament days? Days where you're having a lot more competitions than you normally would.
For sure. So we need to really sustain those energy levels, and it might be tough to get like that balanced performance plate in because we're expected to go all the time. So really great performance pack items, things to throw in your bag that maybe don't need refrigeration, but they're going to be those simple carbohydrates to really top off your gas tank. So I usually think of maybe fruit sources, go squeeze items, right? A lot of those like applesauce squeeze packs are going to be quick and easy. Pretzels, graham crackers. A lot of athletes will have their Gatorades or their carbohydrate drinks alongside them too. So things that are going to be quick and easy for you to grab. And those simple, really carbohydrate sources to sustain your energy level.
And when we think about those like short time spans in between, especially tournament days, we often want to think about like how much energy can we get from like a single snack. So when we're thinking about the energy we might get from, let's say, a Cliff Bar, it's going to be a lot more packed in that small Cliff Bar than, let's say, trying to get the same amount of energy from 7 rice cakes with a little peanut butter. So like the more we get into the littlest amount of food, the better, because it's just going to be easier for our body to digest. I had some athletes that over the summer utilize, they're just at Target or Sam's Club, like frozen smoothie bowls, and bringing those along with like some granola and fruit too. And by the time you like get to your tournament day and they've sat out over the game time, they're like perfect for after the game, that you can just take them in your bag with you and can be really refreshing. So that was a really fun one that came up that I would encourage you guys to try too.
Great question.
Someone asked, what are your thoughts on whey protein versus casein?
Oh, great question. So whey protein versus casein protein. So both of those proteins are coming from our milk sources, and we think about how it's going to be the best function for our body and our performance. We talked a lot today about recovery. So whey protein, we know through science that it's going to be absorbed super quickly. So that's typically what we would find athletes choosing right after their training session, because we just had that stimulus, that stress on our muscles, and we really want to start that recovery process as soon as we can. So we're going to have that whey protein. It's going to get to our muscles super quick. Our casein protein, also found in like dairy items, is going to break down a little bit slower. Okay. And so that's something that a lot of athletes love to put before bed, because then their muscles are able to take that protein throughout the night. We have that time to really be building and recovering, because it takes a little bit longer for our muscles to fully get it all in.
Great. So someone else asks, how do you know that you're getting enough nutrients to stay healthy and, getting enough nutrients that your body needs to catch up?
How do you know? Absolutely. Well, one of the first things I think of is how you're feeling day in and day out, right? Are you noticing any symptoms like low energy, fatigue, brain fog, maybe increased injury, or you've been struggling with injuries for a while? There's a ton of signs and symptoms, but then it's also sometimes just difficult to match our energy needs, right? We think about what's expected of us as an athlete, as a student athlete. Sometimes it's hard just to know exactly what our body needs. And that's why I would encourage every athlete to come and sit down with a sports dietitian and get a good understanding of how they can meet their energy needs, but then also meet their goals too.
Yeah, and if you're like training and putting this commitment into your sport and into your schooling and just feeling like I'm not getting out when I'm putting in, that's one of those first indications that there's some sort of imbalance there. Like I'm showing up every day for the weight room, and I'm showing up every day for practice, and I'm showing up every day for my classes, but like I am getting, let's say, weaker or slower, or I have had repeated injuries, or my injury is not healing as my PT or my doctor expected, and I can't get back out to doing what I love. Those are some of the real big signs that our nutrition is not meeting our needs. So if you find that you're in this like plateau, or like feeling like you're moving through sludge, those are going to be real big signs of that our body's just not getting the nutrients, especially at the need that you have for it at an athletic level.
Awesome question.
Great. Yeah. So I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. So if anybody's got any last minute questions, feel free to get those in the Q&A or the chat box. Otherwise, I'm going to start kind of wrapping things up here. So our next two talks coming up, we've got October 19th, Athletic Injury Basics with Dr. Parker Hansen. Should be a good talk. And then we've got our nutrition team back for another fueling logistics talk in November. So keep an eye on our webpage, tcomn.com/educate to elevate to register. We'll be sending links out to individual sessions as we did previously for this one. So yeah, we hope to see all of you in a month, or about a month. I suppose if it's the third Wednesday, it's not necessarily exactly a month, but you know what I'm getting at. But yeah, thank you all for joining us tonight. We're super excited that you were here, and we will see you guys in a couple of weeks.